I'm George Galloway and I present Kalima Horra on Al-Mayadeen television. Here we are in London. I speak my words freely, either in Parliament, on television, here on the streets of London. Kalima Horra means free word. That's what I speak. So Kalima Horra is a two-way conversation. Check it out on Al-Mayadeen television. Welcome to Kalima Horra with me, George Galloway, on Al-Mayadeen television. Coming to you from London, but discussing Palestine. Discussing the anniversary of the Great March of Return. The Palestinians have always been marching to return. Sometimes they go forward, sometimes they're forced back. But they have never, in all the years since the Nakba, given up their right to return. And why should they? It's an inalienable, which means, in plain language, a right that no one can take away from you. No one, no power, no law can take away from you their inalienable right to return to their homeland, and in many cases to their own property. I have always thought, in well over 40 years of activism on this subject, that this is a most poignant and heartbreaking aspect of the Palestinian tragedy, that they can actually see their own land, in some cases their own houses, with foreigners living on it and in them, whilst they themselves eke out a meagre and often blood-soaked existence as internally displaced people or as refugees in the surrounding countries. The reality is that no one can take away the Palestinian right to return, but nobody is acting in favor of that right of return. Indeed, in the Oslo agreements, it could be argued that the right of return was formally abandoned by the PLO and by the then leadership of the national authority. But the reality is no one, not their own government, not anybody else's government, can take away that right. In the last year alone, thousands have been shot, thousands have been gassed, hundreds have been killed, hundreds have been maimed and disabled. In fact, some of those that have been killed were earlier disabled. One man in particular I shall never forget. A man with no legs, sitting, holding a flag, and then he was dead. Amongst those who have been shot and killed, and amongst those who have been shot and maimed, are ambulance workers, first aiders, medical personnel, journalists, men, women, and children. It has reached the stage that so routine is the Friday afternoon bloodbath that no one in the West even bothers to report it. Of course, we have long gotten used to the truth that not all blood has the same value. Not all sacrifice is remembered for as long. And if some blood is cheap, Muslim blood is cheaper than most, and Palestinian blood seems to be the cheapest of all. And yet, the unquenchable desire to return to their country, to hold to their country and their heritage and their culture has never died. I've told the story before, but once I was giving a speech on Palestine in the Arctic Circle in a town called Yellowknife, where the temperature was minus 47 degrees, 47 degrees below zero. I went out onto the Great Slave Lake where the ice was 10 feet thick, and someone had drilled a hole for me to fish. I soon realized, as I grew closer to that someone, that it was a young girl who didn't look like she came from the Arctic Circle. I asked her where she was from, and she answered, Haifa. She was the northernmost Palestinian refugee in the world. She didn't come from Haifa in the sense that she was not born there, but neither were her mother or father actually born in Haifa. But forevermore, they will be from Haifa. And if they cannot return there, they'll bring up their children, who will bring up their children with that desire, that determination to return. So the sacrifice of the Palestinian people is almost without precedent. The length of the struggle since 1948, almost without precedent. But the Palestinians are not going to go away. And this, I think, is the question that exercises the minds of Western statespeople and governments, if not very many journalists these days. Once upon a time, it was different. Everybody in the world knows that no matter how you try to normalize the utterly abnormal apartheid settler state that they call Israel, no matter how many Eurovision Song Contests you award them, or how many European football tournaments you invite them to, no matter how many fading rock stars go there to play, it will never be a normal country. Because, as Professor Einstein, perhaps the greatest of all the Jews of all the world, put it, I cannot be a part of a society that is built on the graves of another, built on the stolen property of another. That's my view. You may have a different one. This is an audience of distinguished experts, some of them from Palestine itself, some of them from Gaza. Indeed, perhaps the last time I saw you, Yousef, we were together inside the Gaza Strip, a tiny piece of land, one of the most densely populated areas in the world. Well, nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, no way in, no way out. And when the guns start roaring and the fighter jets start bombing and strafing, there's nowhere for anyone to go. And even if there was, the vast majority of the people of Gaza would stand and be prepared to die where they are. It is an extraordinary story. It has effectively dominated my life, and I'm not Palestinian. I first became involved in this issue in the midsummer of 1975, and it's now almost the midsummer of 2019. It's been a long struggle here in the West, standing up for the Palestinian people. I could show you my scars, but this is a family show. Who's going to take the microphone first? Yes, sir, please.
I think what you adequately really described is just what an example the Palestinians are in terms of their humanity and their courage, and their unwavering dedication towards freedom. And the Great March, again, is just another example of that. Like, this is happening in the wake of the recent election when Netanyahu has won for the fifth time, despite scandals of corruption and all of that. And
charges pending.
Yes, it's still happening. And the fact that he's been elected on a rhetoric of annexing the West Bank and all sorts of crazy.
It would be appropriate, a thief as the prime minister of a country based on stolen land, though. I mean,
of course,
it's not actually all that unusual.
Of course, but from international standards, it's alarming. Like, the fact that he has the audacity to do that so publicly. And of course, we know that that's what they want to do anyway, but to do it so publicly, it shows just how audacious they are becoming. And it also...
Mind you, were you hoping that his opponent would win? Because it seemed to me that it was an election contest between two people vying with each other over how many Palestinians they've already killed and how many they're ready to kill.
Exactly, and that comes to my more deeper point, is that it shows that there's a large contingent of Israeli society itself that is willing to entertain a future where they are going to essentially finish where they left off with the Nakba, to essentially go ahead and take over the whole of Palestine.
It's over 84% of the people voted for parties pledged to kill Palestinians.
Exactly. And, we're coming to a point where there is absolutely no excuse, no level of propaganda can really hide that now. And this, as amongst of previous calls, and I'm sure future calls in the future, is a call to push for boycott, for a divestment, and ultimately for a call for governments across the world to sanction a state that really doesn't have any ownership of where it claims to be.
It would have long ago been boycotted and sanctioned, wouldn't it? Even apartheid South Africa, although it was immensely profitable, unlike the money that's given to Israel, which doesn't turn a profit for the people investing in it at all, because they give it away as a gift. It's not even as if they're getting a return on their gigantic investment, billions every year. In Israel. In fact, it's giving the international system an ongoing headache. But South Africa, in the end, no decent or respectable people went buying South African apartheid goods or took a holiday in Sin City, as we called it. But so far, Israel's led a charmed life on that, hasn't it? Even though apartheid Israel is actually worse than apartheid South Africa, at least according to the grandson of Nelson Mandela.
Yes, definitely. And the white nationalists of South Africa never had the PR, a sort of like the complex of like of lobbying and media and all that sort of stuff that the Israeli state enjoys. But yes, okay, they have all the cultural sides of Eurovision and like trying to make Tel Aviv and other places as a tourist destination, all that sort of things. But at the same time, there is the more sinister side where you have the detaining of children being tested for that are being tested for like pharmaceutical companies. You have the weapons that they sell from Israel are obviously being tested in live situations, and that means obviously the killing of Palestinians. You have the more sinister side where they're engaging in the arms trade, into the security complex,
And
which is
according to Haaretz, the Yemen war is providing a bonanza for Israeli mercenaries.
Yes.
Who are going to fight Saudi Arabia's war in Yemen.
Yeah.
In very considerable numbers.
And that is definitely part of their diplomatic charm offensive as well. So not just the sort of nice, glossy things that you see like with Eurovision, but also the more sinister stuff that enables them to work with like the likes of MBS.
Yousef.
Thank you very much, George, for the powerful introduction. We are always proud of you and your stance. Well, the Great March of Return is a turning point in the collective memory of the Palestinian people and their history for a number of reasons. First, the nonviolent struggle or the nonviolent peaceful demonstrations, this is the first time, this is the longest peaceful demonstration that continued for 48 weeks in a row, during which, as you mentioned, youngsters, unarmed protesters risked their lives. It was their right to protest. They were in their own land, whereas the fourth powerful army in the world was stationed with warplanes and tanks killing those peaceful protesters simply because they called for the implementation of the right of return. They did not call for the right of return. They called for the implementation of the right of return for the refugees who are scattered all over the world. And also they stressed on the necessity that the international community should hold Israel accountable for the ongoing siege that has been going on for the past 12 years, which transformed Gaza into the world's largest open-air prison, where nearly 2 million people are in that cage, two-thirds of whom are descendants of refugees. I was born in Gaza. My grandfather, he was forced to flee his town back in 1948. So I can imagine, despite the fact I'm here, but my soul is there. So seeing those protesters lined up along the security fence, it's not a border, it's not recognized border, because Israel has no recognized border. And so these people, they were looking across the border, seeing their grandparents or ancestors' lands unable to reach those lands. So that is actually the grim reality, that some people in Gaza, they can travel all over the world. I travel to so many countries, but we are banned for life to go to the West Bank or to Jerusalem, or Christians in Gaza are prohibited from visiting. It's not easy for them even to reach Bethlehem, the Christians of Gaza. So everybody is being collectively punished in Gaza. And unfortunately, the Palestinians are let down by the so-called Arab regimes, Arab countries. So the people of Gaza, they pin their hope on the peaceful, loving people, freedom-loving people around the world who show solidarity with the Palestinians. I mean, people should understand the root of the problem, which is the occupation, the military occupation, the Israeli occupation. And what is really painful is the normalization ties that is ongoing until this moment. So we are let down by those so-called Arab countries who claim to show solidarity with us.
Well, I wanted to ask you about that, Yousef, because when I joined this struggle in 1975, all the Arabs supported the Palestinian cause, and virtually none of the people in the West did. And now in 2019, millions, tens of millions of people in the West support the Palestinian cause, but you often get the feeling that the Arab support has ebbed away, and so regimes that would have been afraid to do so in the past are belly dancing for Israel.
Double standard policy, the international conspiracy of silence, and those so-called Arab leaders, or some of whom are described as dictators, they show, I mean, they have to abide by what the U.S. says. Look what Trump did when he went to Saudi Arabia, taking all the money and then saying that we are protecting you. So I think they are kind of, it's the Palestinian cause has become a headache for them. So they want to say, okay, let's, why we are worried if the Palestinian leadership is negotiating with Israel. But it's totally different scenario, because the Palestinians, they have to deal with the reality on the ground, whereas the Arab leaders, they only give lip service.
Well, they're choosing to do so, yeah. Yes.
My name is Fatima. I am a Palestinian, and I was born and grew up in refugee camp in Lebanon all my life. My parents actually driven out from Haifa. But Geneva Convention guarantees the right of return to those Palestinian refugees who were thrown out of their homeland in 1948 and in 1967. Even if I was born in any part of the world, I still have the right of return, where my parents still having the document and prove that this is my homeland. What is ironic that, those Jews who come from Europe or wherever, they have the right to go and live in Haifa or in Jaffa or any place in Palestine, where my parents come from, where I come from actually, while I have no right of return. This is the ironic things, that any Jew in the world have the right to go back.
Well, I could convert to Judaism and automatically inherit,
for example, yes,
the right to return to Palestine.
Exactly. The right of return is the hegemony within the Palestinian refugees and within the Palestinian issue, basically. No one can say no for the right of return. And who says this is a betrayal. We call them a betrayal. Definitely. I would say we have the fourth generation of Palestinian. We're still saying we want to go back to Palestine. We want to go back to our properties, our land, even if the houses is not existed, but the land is existing. And we have the document to prove that this is our right of return, which is Geneva Convention guarantees us. What's happening in Gaza, the demonstration, the unarmed demonstration in Gaza, it is not enough, because it's not fair that just, one side is doing this. We have to show more Palestinians are demonstrating peacefully, unarmed, if you want to say, not just in Gaza. We wanted in the southern area of Lebanon. We wanted in Syrian border, in Jordan, and in Egypt. That's what we want now to see, to show that the right of return is the issue.
Okay, thank you. This gentleman here.
My name's Ahmed Najjar. I'm from Gaza. My brother actually was injured last year in December in the March. And he was at the back watching, and I was just thinking about it, me being here with a British passport, traveling around the world. But I didn't manage to see my family for the last, since 2013. I couldn't go back and see my family because of the situation in Gaza, and the borders are always closed. I last year tried to go to the West Bank, but I was returned back with my British passport, and I was told that I can't get in because I'm from Gaza, and I'm not allowed to the West Bank, whereas my European friends were with me actually, and they managed to get in. So we were both having the same passport, but they were let in and I wasn't. If we go back a little bit and look at the problem that started really from Europe, where the Jews were massacred, and then the Europeans felt that they have a problem and they decided to outsource this problem into a different region, and then where they created Israel. And then after that, they normalized the relationship with Israel. They looked after Israel, and they criminalized the Palestinians. And they actually, now I couldn't bring my parents to the UK because they got a visa rejected 3 times. And then I couldn't go to see them. And whereas the Israelis with Israeli passport come to Europe, anywhere in Europe, without a visa for 3 months. And having me here sitting thinking like, the problem was created from Europe. We marched to back home, to go back to our land. We marched for our rights, for our basic human rights, to go to gain any kind of rights, really, for the Gazans particularly, that they can't move, they can't travel. And yet we are looked at as the criminal ones, as the terrorists, as the ones who always throw rockets. And the Israelis are, of course, part of the Eurovision, of course, part of all these programs, part of all this knowledge that they gain from Europe and they gain from the US. And then having to see that, you know, looking at it, and as a Palestinian, I really do think that the Europeans should stand up more for the Palestinians. They have done worst thing ever to the Palestinians.
Maybe we should start asking the Arabs first.
I would ask the Arabs as well, but if you look at the problem, where the problem started from, the problem started from Britain.
It started from
here.
Yes,
and that's the issue.
It started
also,
from
the
here,
issue also,
but that's not the problem now.
It is.
The problem is that you are surrounded by 350 million Arabs in Arab states, almost all of which now, are on the side of your occupier.
Can I ask you, what does it have to do with me as a Palestinian with the rest of the Arabs? I have to do with Britain that has caused me this pain and caused my family throughout history. But and also the Europeans.
Britain is a small mouse on the international
but one more
stage.
thing, that's fine.
Even if every person in Britain wanted to support the Palestinians, it would make any difference at all. There'll be more of this after the break. You're watching Kalima Horra with me, George Galloway, on Al Mayadeen television, talking about Palestine. The Great Return March, the right of return for the Palestinian people. We took the Kalima Horra camera onto the streets of London to see what the people thought. Let's take a look.
Why do you think the Palestinians have decided to begin the Great March of Return?
I guess, it's coming from a viewpoint of massive ignorance in terms of the context of the whole situation.
It seems like they're trying to send a message out in one of the most peaceful ways possible.
I think it's a sign of resistance after 13 years of siege and not being able to live properly without water, light.
according to international law and also different resolutions, the occupation should not last forever.
I think that they are doing it because occupation is lasting for too much time, for too long, and international community is not taking care of the Palestinians' problems, and the far right is harshening and harshening the policies of occupation and racialization and apartheid in Israel and Palestine. Since it is a problem that I've been thinking about for a long time, because my mother is Jewish and I'm from Italy, I think that the only possibility for overcoming this situation is to build a binational state with full and equal rights for both Palestinians and Israeli Jews.
So what can the international community do to lift the siege of Gaza?
Listen. I think that's the first thing that tends to be lost in these situations.
The UN a couple of weeks ago just recognized Israel to be an apartheid state, and this is only alarming because it is an apartheid state and it's been going on since 48, and it's not something new. But I think the people and the international community is becoming more aware of the problems in Gaza and in Palestine in general.
You know, the Palestinian people have been under siege since this creation of Israel, and the way the Palestinians are being treated at the moment is not particularly healthy. It's akin to what happened in Poland in the time of the Second World War, similar kind of segregation that the Jewish people were put under. It's one of the reasons why Israel was created in the first place and given a state to Jewish people, and they're now perpetrating the same crime towards the Palestinian people.
Quite strong stuff on the streets of London, madam.
Hi, I'm Carol Haj, and I'm originally from Jaffa. And I'd like to say that, yes, this country, there is a lot they can do here, and it's about time they do it. At the moment, they want to take the citizenship from any ISIS supporter coming back. I have yet to go to a meetup group or a lunch club without having Israelis in London who've been there committing crimes against my people. They go by busloads to watch the attacks on Gaza. They're going, and they're not stopped here. They can be set. I was in Palestine, and the settlers I met live in England. They go for a few weeks at a time. It's time this is stopped. A crime is a crime, whether you're a Muslim or a Jew. I'm Christian, but I believe everybody should be treated equally. And this country does have a lot of people that I met, both in Palestine and here, who are committing crimes against the Palestinians. And it's time to make them realize this is a crime. Wherever you commit crime, if somebody goes to Thailand and rape a child, that's a crime. They're convicted here. If somebody is in ISIS, it's a crime. Why is it okay to go and shoot a Gazan, or kill a child, kidnap children, join the IDF, and come back here to this country and have nothing to say? It is a crime, and it's time this government start being even and fair. And this also put us at risk, because I am, as a mother in this country, my child was targeted because his mother is Palestinian, and somehow the kids think it's okay. Oh, Palestinian is they see nothing wrong with it. There is something wrong with it. Whether my child is sleeping in this country or sleeping in Palestine, they have to be safe. And we're talking about the occupation, the military occupation. A few weeks ago in London, there was the Mental Health Day at Birkbeck University, and they had the Palestinian children. These are not children who's been arrested or anything. These are just Palestinian children who have 35 soldiers turning up at their bed in the middle of the night. These are little kids. They live that from very, very young age. Why aren't the children protected? Why a child cannot go to school without having to take off their hijab? This is strip searching every single day. So the children were talking how they don't want to get out of their house. They don't want to. We have to do something about it. We can't leave it to these psychopaths to control these children. Our children are at risk, and they are millions of them, and millions whether in Gaza and whether in West Bank. And it's time to stop saying there is nothing we can do about it when they are going. I sit in a meetup group, and they're going, they're coming back. In the gym, it's the same conversation. Why are they here and getting away with crimes? And we're saying that we have nothing to do.
Okay, madam.
Sandra Watfa, originally from Akka. I'd just like to talk about the extraordinary bravery of the Palestinians in Gaza, who have nothing but their actual bodies as a tool, and they stand up testimony on behalf of 14 million Palestinians around the world, which in effect is testament to Zionism's epic failure. But to go back to the question of Britain's role in this, I'll have to respectfully disagree with you, because just between 2015 and 2016, there was £402 million worth of arms sales to Israel. These arms have been recognized as the very arms that are actually putting bullets through our children's bodies. And it is unbelievable hypocrisy here, because post-Brexit, 75% soaring trade deals are expected between Israel. So UK is very complicit. This
totally
here island has
totally guilty.
It has authored our catastrophe, but
it's absolutely marginal importance. If Israel didn't buy British weapons, they'd buy American ones.
Certainly.
In fact, we buy as many weapons from Israel as we sell to them. The truth is, this is now an American and Arab issue. The Americans bankroll the entire thing. They armor the entire juggernaut. And meanwhile, the Palestinian leadership is, you want to talk epic failure, there can be no more epic failure than Mahmoud Abbas and the Palestine National Authority.
Agreed, 100%.
And that's before you start talking about the Arab regimes. So all I'm cautioning against here is displacement activity of putting all your efforts into a meaningless apology from a criminal state called Britain, which gave Palestine away, and if its apology was made, it wouldn't be worth the paper it wasn't written on.
Exactly.
I demand it. I demanded it in Parliament for decades. Yes. But it won't change. It won't change.
It's not the apology
on
we
the ground.
need. We need our God-given right to return home.
Yeah, but Britain can't give you that.
Despite the fact that the $15 to $20 billion per year that America, okay, granted, without American support, Israel would fold like a pack of cards within weeks, literally. But this here island not only authored our catastrophe, but I think it's a co-producer and a co-director in the ongoing massacres that are happening. I really do.
Yeah, but all I'm saying to you is Britain cannot force your right to return, because the United States guarantees that your rights will not be implemented. And the Arab regimes in bed with the United States guarantee that. So I want to ask you, I'm entitled to because you are Palestinian, your political leadership is an epic failure.
Agreed.
The strategy of abandoning the right of return and of accepting a two-state solution which will never come, and if it came, again, would not be a solution at all, because the right of return cannot possibly accompany it. These are two epic failures.
Agreed. Yes.
And I want to raise a more controversial one. The abandonment of the armed struggle in favor of Gandhi-type, peaceful, standing at a fence, being shot every Friday, that's an epic failure too. That isn't changing any facts on the ground. Instead of people standing up like fish in a barrel to be shot, far more impact would be made if the abandonment of the armed struggle were reversed. Because I was deeply involved for decades in the defeat of apartheid in South Africa, and I'll tell you, apartheid was defeated between the hammer of the armed struggle and the anvil of mass popular resistance. In Palestine now, we have mass popular resistance, civil, non-violent, and it isn't working. And the armed struggle has been abandoned in favor of what? Having a Palestine National Authority office in every capital, which will be thrown out as soon as Donald Trump decides it. These are big strategic questions that people, I think, tend to avoid.
I agree. It's very, very disparaging. The leadership, we have no leadership, nothing to speak of. Our backs are against the wall, basically, against the fence, all of us collectively. What is to be done? It is within international rights, our complete and utter right, and occupied people have a right to armed resistance. But this falls on deaf ears across the whole globe. It seems to be applicable to every other person on earth except for Palestinians, possibly due, of course, to the hijacking of MSM, mainstream media, who have been splintered in two groups. One has called us terrorists and the other has looked away and completely forgotten the issue. So 71 years of dehumanizing the Palestinians has somehow managed to spread a huge blanket of racism in the collective community across the globe. And I have no answers. But I tell you what, until my last breath, I will never stop fighting for my freedom, and neither will my children.
Inshallah. Yes, gentleman at the front.
Thank you. Sharaf Zabadi, I'm from Hebron, from the West Bank. I just wanted to talk about the issue, the right of return for Palestinians, and I just wanted to say that Israel not only will not allow anybody to come back to Palestine, it's actually not even happy with the Palestinians in the borders of Palestine now. And in its law, there was recently a law that was approved by the Israeli parliament, which is actually a racist law, and it discriminates against the Arab Israeli citizens inside the state of Israel. So what Israel is doing, and what even Netanyahu said recently, is that Israel is a Jewish state and Israel is for the Jewish people only. And I just wonder if, for example, a European country, if the a UK leader came out and said, well, UK is just a Christian country, it's just for Christian people. So what about the other people from other nationalities and other ethnicities? So and also, I'm from the West Bank. I'm from Hebron.
I wanted to ask you about that, if I may.
Yeah.
Netanyahu has just been re-elected, as was said, for the 5th time. His pledge, his election pledge, was to annex you.
Yeah.
How he's going to do that without giving you a vote is, of course, the first question that arises. And I'll answer it. He intends to transfer you. He intends to ethnically cleanse you. That's the only way that annexation makes any sense, because they cannot allow you to vote for an Israeli government. But if they annex the territory and you're still on it, they have to give you a vote. What's the impact in the West Bank of Netanyahu's pledge?
Well, currently in the West Bank, I go visit my family like once a year. And every time I go back, the settlements that were, when I left the West Bank like 12 years ago, they were like few random homes on top of hills. They grew up now into towns and even
cities.
Like cities. And it's, when you look at the size and the infrastructure and the amount of resources the Israeli government puts in there, then you wonder, do they really actually want peace? Do they actually really plan to come out of these settlements anytime soon? And the answer is no. But going back to your question about giving Palestinians in the West Bank the right to vote if they do annex the West Bank, I strongly doubt that, because Israel is planning to treat us as second-class citizens with no right to vote. Practically, the West Bank is all under the Israeli occupation. Even the Palestinian president cannot leave the West Bank without a permission from Israel. And on the ground, the settlements are spread like cancer. So even if you want to have a state, you just practically you cannot. So I think it's a matter of time that Israel will annex the West Bank, because I mean it's just like a few weeks ago Trump recognized the Israeli sovereignty on the Golan Heights, and I think the West Bank is probably going to be the next.
Yes, please, Fatima.
Just to go back about this, you mentioned about the sovereignty of the Golan Heights, and is going to be the West Bank. Basically, Israel is not in favor of any Palestinian existence body or any power body for the Palestinians. We all actually now we have maybe to go back into the first step, which is we never know, which is going to be a resistant or whatever is going to be non-armed resistant, or we don't know. But the issue is we cannot actually always hit ourselves, and that's what's happening now with the Palestinian. The deal of the century is very clear. They are trying to...
Have you any hopes in Trump, Kushner's
I don't
plan?
think so. No, I don't think so, of course, And this is what's happening now to the Palestinian Authority. They are trying to destroy every single thing happened since Oslo Agreement. Even, the right of return, which is the biggest one, basically, within the issue of Palestine. The issue, what's happening is not in our favor, but nobody can say about the right of return is to take
Cancel
it out.
it. No,
or
they
cancel
can't cancel it. No.
Yasser
Just
Arafat
make sure it doesn't
died.
get...
Yasser Arafat died in his office in Al-Muqata'a because of that. Abu Mazen now is being also attacked by the Israelis every single day. They wanted to get rid of him. They wanted to kill him because of that as well, because of the right of return, and because he's still trying to fix it, and he knows, and he is rejecting the deal of the century. That's in his favor. We cannot say, he's not representing of the Palestinians, and we cannot say, no, just go. It's not right for us. So I think now it is the right time. We have to be united as Palestinians for the, to fight the deal of the century, to back our Palestinian leaders, because it is the time now. I think we have to do it.
Well, that's obviously up to you. It's your business, not anyone else's, however close they are to the struggle. But don't ask me to pretend that the current strategy is working. The current leadership is good.
There is no strategy anymore.
We
have to reunite it because it is the time, because there is nothing left, to be honest.
Well, united
in my
behind
opinion,
what?
There is nothing left.
When
we
was
have to
President Abbas
reunite it
elected?
as a Palestinian
when
now.
was President Abbas elected?
Long before Hamas.
Whatever. Yeah, a long time, whatever. But I mean now, it is the time to reunite it. All the Palestinians, it is the time actually to reunite it. There is no time for arguing and accusing each other. There is no time for that, honestly.
Mr. Najjar?
I would agree that we have our Palestinian Authority is corrupt, and from me...
It's just like all the other Arab regimes.
I agree with you.
I can't believe that it's turned out this way.
No,
Having spent decades with Arafat, at his side, I cannot believe what I hear and read and learn about the conduct of the Palestine National Authority.
Yeah, absolutely. I think but like for me as a Palestinian, I want to look at the roots of the issue here, and we want to look at why we don't have an election up until now, since the 2006. That the last election, or 2005, can't remember now. 6, yeah. And the fact that we are kept separated from each other, there's Gaza, there is West Bank, and even in West Bank it is not connected to each other, and Palestinians can't really connect, and the fact that the Palestinians are split and they are not united together, and that's also part of the Israeli strategy. And I find it quite harsh when I see people say, like, why aren't you united, or why are you split with Gaza and West Bank, and there is a government in Gaza and there is a different government in the West Bank. Yes, of course, there is part of this that we hold responsibility for, but it's also the failure of the international community. The deliberate move of Israel in 2004, where they assassinated all of the Palestinian leaders. Israel has the upper hand, where they go fly over any part of Palestine and assassinate any leader that they think he is or she is going to make any change. And we've seen that with Arafat, we've seen that with Narcissi, we've seen that with Ahmed Yassin, we've seen that with a lot of Palestinian leaders that Israel has killed. And so, you know, we are being put in a position where you have this military power where they are against the Palestinians, against their success in any way, are being also supported by our lovely country, Britain, that has caused us the problem, and of course by the United States. And again, I want to repeat, Britain holds a big responsibility. Britain is very influential, and it should change its position.
Well, it was very influential when it committed the crime, of course, or it wouldn't have been able to commit it. But I assure you, it's not very influential now.
From a moral point of view, they should recognize.
Of course, and if there's a Labour government sometime soon, it will recognize the state of Palestine. But that's not going to put any potatoes on your plate, is all I'm saying. Yes, Yousef.
Yeah, I think Israel has been adopting a policy of divide and rule to separate Palestinian brothers and to look Palestinians that they don't deserve a state. You have two governments in Gaza, West Bank, and so on. But let's not also forget that Israel has deepened this geographical split since the signing of Oslo Accords in 1993. Oslo Accords should pave the way for a peaceful solution, not erecting areas of checkpoint between Gaza and the West Bank. Also, Israel has been adopting a policy of buying time. So for 70 years, Palestinians have been struggling. 25 years of futile peace talks did not lead anywhere. Despite that, the Palestinian leadership still adamant to call for the two-state solution, even despite the fact some PA officials and Israeli officials agree that it was born dead. And there's a growing support for one-state solution, secular.
Interestingly, the young Jewish Italian fellow on the
I think
street.
he's not fully aware that his prime minister, the Israeli prime minister, or the majority of Israeli officials will never agree to accept this option.
Well, but they're never agreeing to a two-state solution either, so it doesn't make any difference. They don't agree to a two-state solution. They don't agree to a one-state solution. Why not fight for the one that's right?
So they were hoping that they continue their policy of ethnic cleansing. Palestinians will get tired, bored, and leave unilaterally.
That's never going to happen.
This will never happen.
This is yes, the lady in the front.
As someone that was born with Norwegian blood, my parents are Norwegian, and that's been brought up in the UK and that believes in international solidarity, I believe that the time has come to stop blaming Palestinians for the catastrophe of 1948. And I believe that all the people that are living in the West need to overthrow this far-right agenda that has gone global. I mean, if we look around the world, what's happening is this racist agenda that's flooding all of the political establishments and is being allowed to thrive. I think that this needs to be overthrown in order for us to look back at what we've done to the Palestinian people over so many years and to ultimately apologise, to change and to free Palestine. I think it's been too long. I think we need to stop blaming the Palestinians for their own...
How's it going to be freed?
Well, we have to overthrow this far-right agenda. We have to bring the Palestinian narrative forward, and we have to stop blaming Palestinians for whatever they do, whether they use armed resistance, whether they go to the border and use non-violent resistance. the time is to hold Israel to account, that Fatima Bensouda needs to stop sleeping, wake up and finish her investigation back in 2014. She needs to wake up and she needs to hold Israel to account to all those people that have been shot over this past year. It's disgusting. It makes me feel very angry, very nauseous, and I feel that the Palestinians have been let down immensely over all of this.
No doubt at all about that. Well spoken. Unfortunately, the final word. I supported the Oslo Agreement, more fool me, because I believed in President Arafat. He was a comrade of mine. I supported, therefore, the two-state solution, and I believe that I was wrong. My own view is that as Israel will not grant a two-state solution and is busily paving and building it out of existence anyway, the time has come to re-raise the banner of a binational state in Israel-Palestine. From the Jordan River to the sea, one state, a democratic state, where Jews and Muslims and Christians and atheists all have exactly the same rights. One man, one woman, one vote. And if I were a Palestinian, I would be holding to account my own leadership, whose electoral terms long extinct, whose record of failure is enormous, almost unending. There's a need for a renovation, a rejuvenation of the Palestine Liberation Organization. And I've got a guy that could lead it. He's in an Israeli prison. He could be Palestine's Nelson Mandela. Free Marwan Barghouti. Free Palestine. Thanks very much for watching.